Let's go to step number 2 on this checklist. Step number 2 on this checklist is to verify that the condenser coil is clean and there's no damages to it. This is one of the most important parts of the PM cycle. The first step to do is to verify you have the power shut off to the unit. Here at ACT, we like to verify that the chiller is shut off at the main breaker located normally outside next to the chiller. And we also are implementing a lockout tagout sequence here. Please make sure that you're following the state laws and also your company policy on any kind of lockout tagout procedures. The next step on this is going to be to remove the top cover. Once you removed all the screws, you can just lift this cover up and go ahead and remove and just set off to the side for now. From here, we're going to have access to the condenser coil. As you can see from the outside, it looks pretty clean, but if you look on the inside here, you can tell that this coil hasn't been cleaned from the inside in a very long time. Here at ACT, we require you to clean the condenser coil from the inside out. That's extremely important, as we tend to see this all too often, where only the outside looks clean, but the inside is still dirty, and we have reduced capacity because of it. Also, once you've completed the cleaning of the condenser coil, it is extremely important, and it's a requirement that you take a picture of the inside face of the coil and the outside of the face of the coil, as these are required to be submitted with your PM checklist. Step number 3 on this checklist is to do a visual inspection of the cooling lines located inside and outside of the chiller. Verify that the flex lines that are located outside, if they're flex or not, there's no damages to it, cracks or corrosion, and also all the piping on the inside. If you notice any kind of damages that look concerning or there's any kind of leaks, please contact ACT immediately to see how we're going to resolve this issue. Before we move to step number 4 on this checklist, we're actually going to perform step number 23. Step number 23 on this checklist is to verify that the glycol in the system is at a 50% propylene glycol rate. The best way to do this is to remove this front cover. Most of the time there's screws on the bottom and 2 on the top. Once you remove the cover though, you can access this stainless steel flex line here. And all you have to do is crack open the drain valve and you can fill up a cup to get your sample. Once you have your sample, the best way to verify you have a 50% propylene glycol mix is to use a refractometer. You can pick these up at any local HVAC supply house. Once you've figured out what the concentration of the glycol in the system is, step number 4 is to verify that your tank is completely full. On this chiller, if you come over here and take a look, you're going to notice that the sight glass, or the viewing window to see the sight glass, is cloudy, so you're unable to see through. Luckily, we removed the top cover, so if you look above here, you can actually see that this sight glass is currently full. If the sight glass was not completely full and you had a percentage of glycol that was less than 50%, this would be the time that you would add a higher concentration to get it to the 50% mark. Once you have that completed, we're going to go ahead and move on to step number 5 on this checklist. Step number 5 on this checklist is to verify the electrical controls in the system. And the best way to do that is just to do a visual inspection of the wires. Make sure there's nothing frayed or no damages or melted plastic anywhere. It's important to verify with the power off the wires, the insulation on the wires aren't damaged, they're not brittle, and that there's no sticking wires out, and that the contactors are not burnt. Once you've verified this, the next step is to take your multimeter and do a resistance check from the outlet of the contactor or the main breaker through the outlet of the contactor. The best way to do this is to push in the contactor to get a resistance. If you're getting a resistance greater than like a 0.2 to 0.5, please contact ACT immediately to help us so we can help you troubleshoot it. Once you've done all this verifying that there's less than 0.2, you can go ahead and move on to the next step. Step number 6 on this checklist is to verify that there's no voltage drop between the contactors. At this point, we're going to have to put the cover back on and turn the power back on. So let's do that now. Once you got the cover back on, you can then, and it's safe to do so, go ahead and remove your lockout tagout system and turn the power to the chiller back on. At this point, you're going to want to use caution while working around these electrical components. We're not going to, for this video, to turn on the chiller, but at this point the chiller would be up and running and it'd be loud. So once you have power to the chiller and the contactor for the pump is running, what you're going to want to do is go to ground on one of your legs, make sure your voltage meter is on volts, and measure the voltage going into the contactor. And then measure the voltage on the outlet of the contactor to see if there's any voltage drop. If you notice a voltage drop greater than 1 volt, please contact ACT immediately for more troubleshooting. You're going to want to do this for all 3 legs on all the compressor on both contactors. Once you've verified there's no voltage drop going between the contactors, we can go ahead and move on to the next step. The next step is to verify the incoming voltage to the chiller. The best way to do this is take your probes and go to L1 to L2, L1 to L3, and then L2 to L3. You're going to be looking for roughly 480 volts plus or minus 10%.